September 14th, 1937. 4:47 in the morning. Ray Thornton climbs into the operator's cab of his Caterpillar D6, serial number 3R1847, at the Goldfield Consolidated Mine 12 miles southeast of Tonopah, Nevada. 32 years old, married, father of 2 daughters. The engine turns over with its characteristic diesel rattle. 55 horsepower at the drawbar, 6 cylinders firing in sequence. The machine weighs 18,400 pounds empty. By day's end, it will weigh more. Thornton's job is simple. The dredging operation pulls up gold-bearing gravel from ancient stream beds buried 40 feet below the desert surface. That gravel, mixed with mercury and rotating amalgamation barrels, produces gold. But it also produces waste. Tons of mercury-saturated sludge that needs to be moved, piled, redistributed. Thornton pushes that sludge 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He has been doing this for 7 months. The sludge is warm when fresh. Sometimes it steams in the cold morning air. The mercury content runs between 200 and 400 parts per million, though nobody measures it. Mercury costs $4 per 76-pound flask. The mine uses approximately 60 flasks per month. Under optimal conditions, amalgamation operations lose 10% of added mercury. Under actual conditions, they lose 30%. That's 1,368 pounds of mercury per month deposited into the earth. Thornton reshapes daily. He doesn't wear gloves. So the controls are slick with diesel and dust, and gloves make his hands clumsy. He doesn't wear a respirator. Nobody does. The dust cloud that follows his bulldozer contains pulverized mercury droplets so fine they hang in the air for hours. He breathes that air from dawn until dusk. Every day. The mercury enters his bloodstream through his lungs and through his skin, where he wipes his face with his bare hands. By November, his fingers begin to tremble. At first, just his right hand, a slight quiver when he tries to thread a bolt or button his shirt. His wife notices. He tells her he's tired. The mine operates year-round and winter work is harder. The ground freezes. The bulldozer tracks throw frozen chunks of contaminated soil against the cab, where it melts and runs down the glass in dark streaks. On December 3rd, another operator named Frank Delacroix reports numbness in his feet. Delacroix runs a Caterpillar D7, the heavier machine used for the largest tailings piles. He's been at Goldfield for 11 months. The mine doctor examines him, finds nothing obviously wrong, prescribes bed rest. Delacroix returns to work 3 days later. The numbness spreads to his hands. Under this video, you'll see a subscribe button, a small action with a big meaning. By pressing it, you're not only supporting the creation of more content like this, but you're also becoming part of the very exchange we've been talking about, giving and receiving in harmony. It's not about the size of the action, it's about the meaning. A simple subscription tells me these words reached you. It tells me that the effort, the late nights, and the discipline to bring this message forward mattered to someone on the other side of the screen. If you want to see how this silent epidemic unfolded in the Nevada desert, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Ray Thornton. January 1938. Thornton's tremor is now constant. His wife watches him try to eat soup and sees the spoon shake so badly that half the liquid spills before it reaches his mouth. He stops eating soup. He stops shaving himself because he can't trust his hand near his throat with a straight razor. At work, operating the bulldozer becomes a battle between his intention and his body's betrayal. The levers require steady pressure. His hands deliver erratic jolts. The mine employs 8 bulldozer operators in total, working in rotation. By February, 5 of them show symptoms: tremors, numbness, vision problems. One man, Joseph Keller, age 29, begins experiencing severe headaches. Another, Martin Pierce, 41, develops a metallic taste in his mouth that never leaves. He stops eating. In 6 weeks, he loses 32 pounds. Nobody connects these symptoms to the mercury. The mine doctor, trained in general practice, suspects influenza, vitamin deficiency, possibly early onset Parkinson's disease in Thornton's case. He prescribes tonics and rest. The operators who can still work continue working. The mercury sludge doesn't move itself. March 14, 1938. Frank Delacroix collapses at the controls. His D7 continues forward without him, blade down. pushing into the base of a tailings pile until the engine stalls under the load. Workers find him unconscious in the cab, his skin pale and cold to the touch. They carry him to the mine office. He regains consciousness 20 minutes later, confused, unable to remember his own name. The mine doctor calls for an ambulance to transport him to the hospital in Tonopah. Delacroix dies 4 days later. The death certificate lists cause as acute renal failure of unknown origin. He's 37 years old. The autopsy, performed by a doctor in Reno who specializes in mining-related fatalities, reveals mercury concentrations in his kidneys that exceed 250 micrograms per gram of tissue. The safe level is less than 5 micrograms per gram. The doctor files his report with the Nevada Bureau of Mines. The Bureau receives hundreds of such reports every year. They note it and move on. The Goldfield mine doesn't move on. Management now has a problem. 1 dead operator, 5 sick operators, and a dredging operation that requires constant tailings management. So they hire replacements. 3 men arrive from Elko County, drawn by wages of $7 per day, plus room and board. They receive brief instruction on the D4 and D6 models, then start pushing mercury-saturated earth 10 hours daily. By June 1938, Ray Thornton can no longer operate machinery. His tremors are so severe that his entire body shakes. He can't hold a coffee cup. He can't sign his name. His wife feeds him. He speaks with difficulty, his words slurred as though drunk. The mine releases him with 2 months severance pay and a letter of recommendation for future employment. A letter he can't sign because he can't control a pen. July brings unbearable heat to the Nevada desert. Temperatures inside the bulldozer cabs exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The operators work with doors and windows open, maximizing their exposure to mercury-laden dust. Joseph Keller, the man with severe headaches, begins experiencing seizures. The first happens at home. The second happens at the controls of his D6. The bulldozer runs up the side of a tailings pile and tips sideways, pinning Keller beneath 9.2 tons of steel. He's extracted alive, but with severe internal injuries. He dies in surgery that evening, August 12, 1938. The Nevada Bureau of Mines sends an inspector. He examines the tailings piles, collects soil samples, interviews the remaining operators. His report, filed September 1, 1938, notes elevated mercury content in operational areas and recommends improved ventilation and protective equipment for workers engaged in tailings management. The recommendations are not mandatory. The mine continues operations. By October 1938, all 3 replacement operators show symptoms. Martin Pierce, the man who stopped eating, dies of organ failure on October 29th. He weighs 103 pounds at death, down from 178 pounds 15 months earlier. The mercury in his liver measures 412 micrograms per gram. November 1938. The mine superintendent, a man named Charles Whitmore, who never operates machinery himself but walks the operation daily, begins experiencing vision problems. Peripheral vision in his left eye narrows. Colors appear washed out. He sees a specialist in Carson City who can find no ocular pathology. The damage is neurological, not optical. Mercury has crossed the blood-brain barrier and is destroying cells in his visual cortex. December 12, 1938. A 4th operator, Thomas Ashford, 33, married, no children, drives his D7 directly into a vertical rock face at full throttle. The impact crushes the cab and kills him instantly. The accident report suggests mechanical failure or operator error. The autopsy reveals mercury levels consistent with severe neurological impairment. He likely experienced a seizure or hallucination immediately before impact. The mine finally shuts down amalgamation operations in January 1939. Not because of the deaths. Industrial accidents are common in Nevada mining, but because mercury prices have risen to $7.50 per flask and the ore quality has declined. The operation is no longer profitable. The shutdown eliminates the source of fresh contamination, but does nothing about the existing tailings piles. 300,000 tons of mercury-saturated earth remain in windrows across 40 acres of desert. In February 1939, the mine hires a new crew to grade and stabilize the tailings for eventual reclamation. They use the same bulldozers. The same equipment that's been pushing poisoned earth for 18 months. Nobody cleans the machines. Nobody tests the operator cabs for residual contamination. The new workers sit where the old workers sat, breathe where the old workers breathed, touch what the old workers touched. By June 1939, 2 of these new workers show symptoms. One develops the characteristic tremor, the other experiences severe kidney pain and passes bloody urine. They both quit. The mine superintendent, Charles Whitmore, now completely blind in his left eye and experiencing tremors in both hands, finally undergoes testing at a hospital in San Francisco. His blood mercury level is 127 micrograms per liter. Anything above 20 micrograms per liter indicates dangerous exposure. Whitmore dies in October 1939 of kidney failure. He's 51 years old. The Goldfield operation shuts down completely in November. The bulldozers sit idle through the winter. In March 1940, a salvage company from Reno purchases the equipment at auction. They clean nothing, they inspect nothing. They simply load the machines onto flatbed trucks and transport them to other operations across Nevada and Eastern California. 1D6 goes to a construction site in Fallon. The operator who takes it over, a man named Robert Vance, begins experiencing hand tremors within 3 months. His tremor progresses to full-body shaking within 6 months. He dies of mercury poisoning in January 1941. Ray Thornton, the first operator to show symptoms, lives until December 1941. For nearly 4 years, he exists in a state of progressive neurological collapse. The tremors never stop. His speech deteriorates to incomprehensibility. He requires full-time care. His wife, who cannot afford professional help, tends him herself. She feeds him, bathes him, changes his bedding when he loses control of his bodily functions. She watches him diminish from a strong man who operated heavy machinery to something barely recognizable as human. He dies 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor while the nation's attention focuses elsewhere. The death certificate lists chronic mercurialism as cause of death. He's 36 years old. Of the 8 original bulldozer operators at Goldfield between September 1937 and November 1938, 8 are dead by December 1941. Average age at death, 34 years. Average time from first exposure to death, 30 months. Should the mine's records, such as they are, disappear into the archives of the Nevada Bureau of Mines, where they remain largely unexamined for the next 4 decades. The tailings piles at Goldfield remain in place until 1986, when the Environmental Protection Agency designates the site for remediation under Superfund. By then, mercury from those piles has leached into groundwater, contaminated local water tables, and spread across 100 square miles of desert through wind erosion. Cleanup costs exceed $14 million. The cleanup removes the soil and sequesters it in a specially designed containment facility, but it cannot remove what's already dispersed. Mercury persists. It doesn't break down. It doesn't disappear. It simply moves slowly and inexorably through water and wind and the bodies of living things. Today, soil samples from the former Goldfield operation site still show mercury concentrations averaging 40 parts per million, low enough to avoid regulatory thresholds, or high enough to pose long-term risks. Fish in nearby reservoirs carry mercury in their tissues. Birds that feed on those fish carry it further. The contamination spreads in ever-widening circles, a slow poison rippling outward from decisions made by men who didn't know or didn't care or simply couldn't afford to care when gold prices were high and mercury was cheap. The bulldozers are gone. The operators are gone. The mine is gone. But the mercury remains. Now, some estimate it will persist in measurable concentrations for another 10,000 years, a geological time span for an industrial accident. 8 men dead for metal that will outlast civilizations. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from.